We're the ones who dare to dream. We won't let anyone hold us back. We'll take the road, let's travel by and build our empire piece by piece. We've got our dreams and we've got a plan. We're not afraid to take a stand. We'll face the risks and embrace the fear, cause we know that success is near. There will be times when we'll fall down, but we'll get up and turn it around. We're entrepreneurs, we're not afraid to lose. We'll keep moving forward, we got nothing to prove.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4. I guess it's number 4. And I'm super excited to welcome yet another entrepreneur. I see I'm kind of low. I'm going to just go ahead and adjust the camera, i.e. the laptop cover. You know, one of the things that I actually wanted to do, by the way, my name is Joseph Jaffe. I am a professional EOS implementer. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I am a facilitator. I'm a talk show host. I'm a father. I'm a son. I'm all over the show. I'm everything and I'm nothing at the same time. But enough about me. Today, we're going to be talking to Nat Berman, who we're going to be talking about personal branding. We're going to be talking about LinkedIn. We're going to be talking about putting in the reps, putting in the hard work. That is coming up, and he is coming up very soon. But one of the things that I've started to do is to start off with a quote, something that I've heard, that I've said. Hopefully, if I've heard it and it wasn't me, I won't take credit for it. And, you know, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure this is my quote either. But I heard this and it's really stuck. It really sticks with me. The only people who don't suffer from imposter syndrome are imposters, because, you know, they're imposters, so they don't have imposter syndrome because they think they're the bee's knees, right? They think they're the shizzle. I don't know, whatever they think they are. I love this because it basically says, if you doubt yourself, if you have self-doubt, if you are, you know, if you're not 100% confident, you're normal. That humility, call it humility or call it just that little voice that actually says, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I don't have to always answer every question within a second. Maybe I can think about it. Maybe I can say, I don't know. That's a good question. You know what? I'd like to ask a few people. Can I get back to you? Would that be okay as well? It's okay to show weakness. It's okay to show vulnerability. And that doesn't make you an imposter. It actually just makes you relatable. It makes you authentic and relatable. So I wanted to share that thought. That's, I guess, the thought of the day or the thought of the episode. I've also been quite vocal and transparent with my own why statement. As a teacher, facilitator, and coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed. And every word means something. Every word comes from a position, whether it was my talk show, Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous, whether it is, in fact, being a coach through EOS, or my latest book, which is called Forever Changed, How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. And this is about the last time I'm going to talk about myself today, because I'm excited to bring Nat into the conversation. But if you want to find out a little bit more, or just actually if you want to get the first chapter of Gino Wickman's Traction, you can do it by scanning that QR code. You can also use another QR code to actually take the organizational checkup and just see how you're doing, how your business is doing, you know, on the journey towards mastery, to what degree you are vision, traction, healthy. And so I just wanted to share that with you. But now it's time for Nat Berman. And now he's looking at this and he's going, wait a second, it kind of looks like me, but it kind of doesn't look like me. He's shaking his head. And I got to tell you, when I actually developed this through a little bit of AI, I looked at this and it was Vanilla Ice. I wanted Nat Berman as Vanilla Ice. And I had no idea why I did this. And then it came to me, and I'm going to bring him on soon and tell him exactly why I made him look like Vanilla Ice. But let me tell you a little bit about him. Nat Berman never wanted a boss or to commute. He had a problem with authority, like I do, and always wanted to do his own thing. In 2007, he founded a blogging platform that he found a blogging platform that changed his career and life forever. 6 months later, he quit his job and he never looked back. 17 years later, and over 17 years, he's grown a portfolio of 25 sites that reached millions of visitors every month and made millions in profit. He never took investment capital. Today, he creates content in front of his pool while wearing incredible t-shirts. We may even see one of those soon. He focuses exclusively on helping people grow their brands and leverage them to build businesses and networks. Now, let me apologize, Nat Berman. Welcome to the show.
How are you? Do I look like that guy? I don't know. Maybe.
You don't look like him, but this was Nat Berman as Vanilla Ice.
Okay. Yes.
So do you know why I chose Vanilla Ice?
Am I cool? I have no idea.
Are you cool? You tell me. You tell me. I think you're pretty cool. I think your t-shirts are cool.
I'd have to leave that to your audience to decide.
Well, I'm going to put them and put you out your misery. This is exactly why I chose it, because as I was doing a bit of research and looking at your bio, you have pioneered and developed what you call the ICE method, ISE. And so for me and my infinite creativity or dumbness, I decided to make you into Vanilla Ice. So my apologies.
All good.
Well, listen, I'm gonna make up for it by creating a different image, which is this one. This is another AI composite, but this is Nat Berman in a variety of very cool poses and renditions and cool shirts. So how about that one? Have I redeemed myself at all?
I don't know. That's kind of freaky looking. I don't know. Does that look like me? I have no idea. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Definitely look like some sort of relative of me.
I'll tell you one thing. I believe that AI actually creates somewhat authentic representations of people. I think I look awful. I've never been able to get a good version of me through AI, which I guess just means that I'm ugly. And so, like, I've come to terms with it. I've come to terms with a face for radio. So Nat, we're gonna get into a whole bunch of topics. I thought I would start off every one of these episodes and I feel very strongly about the fact that we need to balance. It's David Brooks's eulogy virtues along with resume virtues. And I think it's always good to understand the human, get to know the man behind, the woman behind, the person behind the brand or behind the positioning. So I started a little bit of fun that I called "Do you really know your coach?" So I asked people for some fun facts about him, and these were the fun facts that you shared. So we're going to stay ridiculous before we get sublime. Apparently, your nickname as a kid was Niffy. So I am going to challenge you to make this relevant to a show called The Entrepreneur's Journey, talking about personal brands, talking about creating presence on LinkedIn, etc. Why is it relevant that your nickname as a kid was Niffy?
Why is it relevant? I mean, it's something about me that probably very few people know. So as far as authenticity and sharing a bit about myself, that's certainly something that I'm not always comfortable with people knowing because it's a funny little nickname. But when it comes to, I think a cool thing about it was that at such a very young age, you kind of have to learn to deal with adversity, right? When people called me that, it pissed me off. And so you can either sort of handle it and accept, what people are saying, or you can let it bother you and piss you off. And I think that's very prevalent today in social media and the mindset you have to have. So it's kind of like, reminds me of Johnny Cash as A Boy Named Sue, right? He named his boy Sue for a reason, so that he'd grow up and things would be tough and he'd learn how to handle himself. So maybe being called Niffy kind of taught me that at a young age.
Let me tell you, you get a 1014. I mean, talk about being quick on your feet. That was seriously, it was a wonderful, wonderful response. And really what you're talking about, the reason I do this, by the way, Nat, is that you can always find insight and original thought, sometimes in the bizarre and in the sublime or the ridiculous. You're talking about adversity. You're talking about being able to lean into sometimes danger or lean into something that ordinarily would get you down. The abundance versus the scarcity mindset. You're talking about self-deprecation. You're talking about being a little irreverent. You're talking about not taking life so seriously, because guess what? Being an entrepreneur is pretty damn serious at the best of times when you're fighting to survive and thrive. How do you teach this? How do you naturally lean into to the niftyisms of life, if you will?
As far as teaching people how to lean into themselves, which I would consider to be something that is highly important today when it comes to building a brand, for those that have difficulty doing it, the thing that I always recommend is to start off small, and say those things that you might have been holding off on saying for quite a bit of time. But if you're not comfortable laying it all out there, doing it in bits until you're more and more comfortable, until you're more and more exposed. And so a lot of people say that, confidence is a big part of things, but some people aren't confident yet. But I fully believe that confidence is something that can be cultivated through repetition, through experience, just like building a muscle. And so, through more exposure, through more experience, through more repetitions of people sharing a bit more and more about themselves that differentiate themselves from other people, hopefully they develop a confidence to continue doing that more and more and more. So that differentiates their brand.
I really love that. And I love the phrase lean into yourself, because rather than lean into the nickname or lean into somebody else's version of your reality and make that your reality, lean into yourself, embrace yourself for your warts, your quirks, your superpowers. It doesn't all have to be negative. It can absolutely just be, hey, I am, I still love that, Dr. Seussism, which is, be the best you that you can be, right? So another thing that you kind of touched on is this concept of improv. I swear to you, there's only one more AI rendition when you be like, I am never ever. I'm going to have a writer in the green room when I'm ever on a show that no one can ever create any AI rendition of me. But last episode, Alex Freitag spoke about improv, and you've performed stand up in New York City. It's just so clear to me, Nat, that in order to be agile, quick on your feet in this social media enabled chaos that we live in, so much uncertainty, so much volatility, that the more we can actually master an improv like mindset, the better. Talk a little bit about the role that's played and how it's helped you be a better coach and just a better entrepreneur, if you will.
Sure. So obviously, when I did stand up, that wasn't improv. I mean, those were kind of rehearsed things. But I've always gone off of a general idea and then riff sort of a mindset. So when I started doing video on LinkedIn a long time ago, 2019, 2020, I would have a concept in my head, like a subject title. But similar to how I write my content now, I'll literally have like a hook in my head and I just riff on that hook. Like I start from a different place than a lot of people. A lot of people write their content and then they write their hook after. I'm the other way around. I think of something really polarizing and interesting to say, and then think to myself, how can I sort of expand and riff on that? So, in terms of improv and being on your toes, a couple things on that. Number one, that takes time. I've been writing online for almost 20 years now. So, and I've been in some way in a social realm for a very, very long time. So, when it comes to talking to other people, making comments, all that kind of stuff, I can usually do that kind of stuff on the fly. It's it's a good strength to have. It's not easily cultivated, but at the same time, I think being on your feet, being at the ready, having just a wealth of knowledge is certainly helpful. And that comes, again, it comes through time, it comes through experience, it comes through clients, especially if you're a coach. If you've had enough clients, you've experienced enough problems that you're trying to help people solve, that you sort of build up this encyclopedia in your head of responses that can be generated any time. I told you before we even talked, ask me anything you want. I'd almost prefer it not to be scripted or that I would know any questions beforehand. I'd almost rather you just ask them to me on the fly.
And it's quite clear that I'm literally just making it up as I go along, and there is no order in this process of chaos. I actually call it. I have a name for it, Nat. I call it ordered chaos. You know that you find order within the chaos, but the chaos itself is orderly or ordered by being able to kind of. It's almost like my room can be a giant mess, but I know where everything is. Nobody else does, but I do. And I think obviously when you're doing, performing, stand up as well, you've got the order. You know, Jerry Seinfeld, probably one of the most ordered, meticulous, researched comedians there are. But then you've got to be able to think on your feet when the heckler comes about or when something goes wrong. Otherwise, you will go. You'll move from Jerry Seinfeld to Michael Richards, and we all know what happened to him when he was on stage. How do you find the balance between the security and the comfort of the order, and then the ability to kind of jump into full chaos mode or full improv mode?
I don't know. That's a good question. The balance. I'm not really sure it's a balance issue. I just think it's a preparation issue. You know what I mean? If you're giving a presentation and it's in a orderly fashion and it has a very specific cadence to it, like a stand-up routine, and you get interrupted in the middle of it by a heckler, the same principles that I just said before apply. Experience, knowledge base, having done something a number of times, put in the reps, you're prepared for these things and they're not that hard to handle. So it's almost more like having a bunch of ammunition or weapons than it is necessarily having to have a balance. Another part of that balance, I guess you could say, is the ability to not get rattled, is to remain composed, which on social media is very necessary because it's such a volatile place where you're going to be getting both the highest praises and the worst criticism you can possibly imagine. So, like I said, part of it is just experience and having gone through it. And part of it is, again, preparation.
I absolutely love it. And it's actually one of the things you wanted to talk about, which is, two words, two words, both four letters. And it's not the four letters you might think. Maybe to some it is. It's hard work. It's putting in the reps. It's getting, battle tested, getting those scars and just getting even better and better at it, to the point where, I used the analogy the other day, whether you loved him or hated him, one of the most iconic and coolest moves I ever saw was then President George W. Bush giving that press conference in, I think it was in Afghanistan, and someone threw a shoe at him, actually both of their shoes, and he literally just ducked one way and then ducked the other and just kind of smirked and continued. And I just never forgot the image, which is the ability to have kind of just taken it in your stride, no matter what. It's the duck that looks calm above the water, but those feet are going ballistic, below the fold as well. So hard work, the more you do it, the better you get, right?
Agreed. I've always loved Michael Jordan as such a good example of somebody who likely on the inside is just reeling with energy and adrenaline and just wanting to scream at all times, but on the court, cool, calm, and collected. Of course, there's emotions and screaming when necessary and all that kind of stuff. But you know, guys like him, Tom Brady, just Kobe Bryant, a lot of these athletes who just do so well under pressure. There's this calmness and excited calm, and a lot of that does come from so many years of repetition and work that by the time it comes up, they're not surprised and they're not nervous to take the last shot, right? They're not nervous to drive the ball down the field, fourth quarter, 1 minute to go, because they've been there, whether in their head or in practice or a million times before in those big games. Michael Jordan didn't give a shit whether he made or missed the last shot as he took the shot, right? He had that courage, and he would do it again and again and again every single time if you handed him the ball. And the kicker is, and the weird part is, it's almost like it has to be innate that you literally don't care whether it goes in or not. Because if you go in there scared and timid and trying so hard, there's much more of a likelihood that you're going to miss. So yeah, there's some innate things in human beings that some are a bit more prepared for pressure than the others, and genetic factors, whatever, mental toughness. But I just don't think anything can replace experience and hard work as far as being prepared for any particular type of big moment or situation or business you want to start. I mean, whatever it is.
There's so much in that share of yours, from talking about Michael Jordan actually kind of having all these emotions and perhaps anxiety inside him, but on the court he was able to compartmentalize that, to very interesting insight you shared, which is the fact that, as you said, he didn't in the moment he didn't care. He I'm sure cared very much after the fact, when there was nothing he could do about it. But in the moment, there wasn't time to care. There wasn't time to think. There wasn't time to overthink. There was just time to act and execute with the confidence of what had come before, preparing him for what he was about to do, and hopefully the repercussions of, and living with, and celebrating when he made the shot, and commiserating or taking responsibility when he didn't. So I love that, Nat. And you know what? While we're on the subject of sport, the last fun fact for you. This time, you're a little Roger Federer a bit, and you've even got a nice little bob in your hair. So I like this look. You wanted to be a pro tennis player, but if I was to kind of come full circle, talking about dreams, entrepreneurial dreams, sometimes you got to be able to actually know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to just become a pickleball player. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, we've spoken about adversity, we've spoken about preparation, hard work, we've spoken about the reality that sometimes, no matter how hard we work, or at least no matter how hard we work, sometimes we've got to accept that the journey ends for us. Tell us about your journey as a potential pro tennis player, but more importantly, the analogy and the advice for entrepreneurs, even people that are just trying to build a brand and a name for themselves on LinkedIn. We can be as specific and tactical as that. When do you keep going stubbornly, doggedly to try and persevere, and when do you need to throw in the towel?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So tennis for me was very much I think a mental thing. I was too young. I was missing quite a bit of school when I was in middle school to train. And I think I just didn't have the mental capacity I think I understood what was going on too much. And I just wanted to kind of be a kid. And I also loved playing basketball at the time. So I was a very serious player up until about 14. And I'll never forget just having a huge meltdown, screaming at my mom saying, I don't want to play anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it was almost like I had too much of a knowledge of what was going on in my own head and a lot of anxiety. And it's not necessarily a regret. I think at the time it was definitely the right thing to do. The only regret was that I was a very small person at 14 and I didn't really start growing until 15. So who knows what can happen with tennis. But with regards to today and, some of the lessons that you learn, um, definitely something in tennis that I think certainly applies is you have to sort of, especially as an entrepreneur, and it's not easy to do, you have to kind of let go at some point. And what I mean by that is just whether it's your content, whether it's your effort, you just kind of have to let it rip. And one of the hardest things that I had to overcome in tennis was, when you play in a pressure filled match, a lot of times you're hitting not to miss, whereas you really should be hitting to win and just going for it. And a successful entrepreneur will inevitably at some point have to do that. They have to go for it. It doesn't mean they have to be destitute and live on the street and be reckless with their finances and say, I'm going all in that kind of way. But it does mean that at some point they have to sort of push themselves past a particular point. And obviously sport is a humongous example of that, because if you want to reach another level, bodybuilding is always a great example, because if you want to grow a muscle, you have to put it through pain so that it breaks down and builds up back up again. And inevitably, you're going to reach a plateau. And what happens when you reach that plateau? You have to change it up in some way. You can't just keep bench pressing over and over and over again. You're going to have to do different exercises to change it up so that your body morphs in the way that you want it to. And the same goes for building a business. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And if something works, go hard as long as you can, stay as narrow as you can, as best as you can, until it levels off. And when it levels off, that's when you have to, revisit, refocus, reprogram, and go in a different direction so that you're still on your way up. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but there you go.
It's so helpful that let me tell you, I'm going to give you, with my compliments, the name of your, whether it's an autobiography, a biography, or whether it's a memoir. This is the title of it, Nat Berman. This is the Nat Berman story. It's going to be called Let Her Rip. Let Her Rip. It's beautiful, right? Because when you spoke about letting go initially, I thought almost submit, give up, just realize you're not in control. And you're saying, no, you're saying just go for it. Just hit, just be prepared. If you're swinging for the fences, you have to be prepared to strike out gloriously. At some point, it's got to be kind of all or nothing. That's another way. I'm not saying it's one or the other, but it's another way to think about it. And, I kind of, it's scary as hell, but it actually makes me more energized to actually realize that when I have a chance to win the game, let me win it, or let me take responsibility rather than just drowning in mediocrity and the woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Yeah, absolutely. Fully agree. And another point I want to make also is that there should be a balance as well in terms of swinging for the fences and hitting singles and doubles, right? So I happen to be somewhat conservative, and I wouldn't say risk averse, because look, I have my own business. Some people would consider that to be very risky, but at the same time, I'm pragmatic. I know my age. I'm 45. I know my situation. I have a family, a home, all that kind of stuff, that I still have to use my brain and understand that if I'm hitting singles and doubles all day, that's okay. But in my head, I also know when to strategically swing for the fences, as you said. So there is a balance there, but I'll reiterate my point, which is that, as you said, to get maximum results, at some point you do have to sort of go all in. We talked about at the very beginning, LinkedIn, and I had 2 runs with LinkedIn. I had a 2020 run, and then I went in again in 2023. In 2023, I went all in. And I said, I'm going to focus on this platform the most by far. And sure enough, a year later, after having done that, it's, the largest I've been on the platform and the most results I've been getting. And it's because I let go, and I just said, screw it, man. I'm just going to put all my time into this. And no matter what happens, I'll have built a tremendous network. If LinkedIn shits the bed today, I've got hundreds and hundreds of people that I know from it, that I could, wield something if I had to. So just the process of giving yourself to something fully, I think enables you opportunities and affords you things that you really can't possibly know until they sort of come along. I'm on this podcast. I'm on this live right now because somehow you got wind of me. Somehow you either found me or knew me or whatever it is. And that does not happen if I did not go all in on LinkedIn at some point. Right. So, I mean, even this show alone is proof of that.
And there's another interesting insight to kind of build onto what you're saying, which is you don't always know in the moment or even after the fact you plant a seed. You don't always know what's going to come up or when it's going to come up or if it's going to, if anything's going to sprout. And sometimes a piece of content that you created or a panel that you were on, you just never know when it's going to create that spark. I don't even remember how or when I found you, but it was immediate to me. You're the first non-EOS coach that's come on the show. And by doing that, you've already taken my own evolution of the show in a different direction. So by submitting and not overthinking it, you've given something to me without even knowing it, which is, wait a second, why does this have to be EOS coaches? Why can't it be any coach? What kinds of coaches? And that happens sometimes when you let go of the control of the reins, and just say, hey, I use the analogy sometimes of lying back in the ocean and just floating and letting the current, take you where it will, hopefully not too far out to sea. But all right, so Nat, you've kind of told us about your story, your entrepreneurial journey. Joseph Campbell created the hero's journey. I recently interviewed Guy Kawasaki, and I interviewed Gus Batazzi, who's a Krav Maga expert, and he says you're the hero of your own journey. Instead of talking about the whole story, warts and all, something you said, just made me think twice. You said you did 2 runs on LinkedIn. So that was interesting to me. You tried it, it didn't work for whatever reason, and you came back and tried it again, and it did work. There's something beautiful in that story. The idea of knowing, again, not giving up, but being able to put it on the back burner or saying, maybe not right now, and then revisiting it later. Talk a little bit about the skill, or at least the ability to recognize that just because something didn't work yesterday doesn't mean that it won't work tomorrow.
Sure. And it's interesting because when I hear you say it didn't work, part of me gets defensive where I'm like, yeah, but actually it kind of did work. What wound up happening on LinkedIn, and by the way, I'm acknowledging that it didn't work. It's just when you hear someone say it didn't work, it almost sounds like a failure or something like that, right?
And by the way, Nat, and I'm acknowledging that I assumed it didn't work, and that was a mistake because it might have worked fine, and now it's gone from good to great. So
Right.
I give it right back to you.
No,
well.
I hear you. And so how everything happened was like this. So late 2019, early 2020, I already had my website business for a number of years, and I just saw LinkedIn, the platform, and people were just getting a lot of engagement and traction on there, with seemed to be minimal effort. So I just dove right in, started posting content, and it was pretty quick in terms of a rise. I got to 20,000 followers or something along those lines in under a year, and all I was talking about was being an entrepreneur and the stuff that I'd already done, with the websites and the mentality behind it. And um, all of a sudden I started getting inquiries to be a coach. So I'd never been a coach before. And so I immediately hired my own coach to sort of learn more about how to coach and more about client acquisition and how I would sort of um, start taking this a bit more seriously and more as a business. And so I was getting a lot of inbound inquiries. And what wound up happening was I was getting a lot of clients. And I was also doing the websites at the time. And at the time, the websites were about 3-4 hours a day out of my time, which is a phenomenal schedule for anybody. But then what ended up happening is I started taking on a lot of one-to-one clients, and then the commitment to LinkedIn and the commitment to my clients started getting to be a little bit more than I wanted to handle. And so what I wound up doing was I stopped because I effectively kind of burned out a little bit. And I never got off of the platform, but I slowed down immensely. I was doing a lot of repurposed content. I wasn't, doing a bunch of new stuff as much as I had been. I'm an everyday guy, so I post content every single day, pretty much new stuff every day. So I took a long, nice little break. And it wasn't until the summer of 2022 where I sold one of my bigger properties. And it was a reasonably nice windfall. So I kind of had a little bit of time on my hands. And all of a sudden, what was 3 to 4 hours a day on my websites became like 20 minutes. So I really didn't have a whole lot of stuff to do work-wise. So I said, all right, I'm going to go back into LinkedIn and see what happens here. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, because I went back into LinkedIn and it just hit me like a bat out of hell. I was getting just destroyed by younger creators, like just worked. The entire platform changed, and it was extremely hard to generate impressions and get attention and build relationships. It was just a whole new crop of people that were really, from a creative perspective, that were sort of the big dogs on the platform. All the people that I had come up with, they just weren't doing as much, and they weren't doing as well because they hadn't adjusted with the times. And what the times were dictating was spending a lot of time on the platform, building relationships with people, engaging with people, creating really good content. You can't half-ass it, right? And so I spent January to July just working my ass off and getting very little results. So I was not, for people listening, I was kind of stuck at this 100 likes, 100 comments sort of area, X amount of impressions. And it was slowly going up, but not at a rapid pace. And then I took it even more seriously in July, and things really started to accelerate. And then it kind of mushroomed a little bit, but I attribute all of that to just going all in and going really, really hard, and adjusting what I wanted to do and my strategy. So I went back to one-to-one all over again. But this time I had a very specific purpose in mind, whereas in the beginning it was all new to me, and it burned me out. Whereas this time I had a purpose. I was like, well, one-to-one will burn me out again, most likely. But this time I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to create a framework based on all of the things that I do learn from my clients and their success stories and all that, so that I can create my own framework and then build a community around this particular knowledge base. And so that's what I started doing now, because instead of being reliant on one-to-ones, all of a sudden you're building a recurring revenue stream with a community and a course. So it was a totally different, new journey, but it was A, deliberate, and B, couldn't have happened without that first journey giving me that knowledge of what I didn't want to do. And that's something I'm very, very big on with a lot of people, because not every person in the world was meant to hit a baseball. Not every person in the world was meant to sing in an opera or write a book, right? there are some people in the world that were born to do certain things, right? But I think most of us humans, unfortunately, we don't have that one thing that we were born with, that God-given talent or whatever that we were put on this earth to do. So to me, one of the best ways to figure out what to do is A, do a shitload of stuff, and B, figure out what you don't want to do, because that's easy. It's pretty easy to know like what you can't stand. And so I've lived a lot of my life testing and experimenting, and I always knew one thing wasn't for me, having a boss. That was a sure no for me. I just never wanted any authority in my life. So it wasn't a surprise that I sort of got out of everything at, I think it was 28 or 29. 2008 is when I left my job. My whole first 2001 to 2008 was, I didn't like any of it. Like, I did not like working for people. So I always knew that part. But you live and learn year after year after year. You keep eliminating those things you don't like. And then all of a sudden you live a pretty comfortable life because everything you're doing is pretty cool. It may not be, again, this God-given thing, but so what? You know, and I always say that I don't think you find your purpose. I never believed in that. I believe that it's uncovered. And I think, and by the way, it's allowed to evolve over time. You don't always have to have the same purpose, right? Maybe in 2020, my purpose was to find what I'm doing now. And maybe right now that purpose is, you know, bringing people together in this community, lifting other folks up, helping them build their brands and their businesses. And who the hell knows what it'll be a year from now. But at least it's clear. It's very clear to me right now. And I'm very locked in on what I want to do. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that can't get disrupted. It probably will. But it's very good to have that clarity for whatever moment you have it, you know, because it's probably fleeting, but it's definitely stuck for quite some time for me. So I'm going to ride it until as long as I can.
I mean, you said you said so much in there that is worth, you know, unpacking and expanding on. And in the interest of time, I wish we could, but we can't. But I will. A couple things that resonated. I jotted down this idea of your don'ts over your do's. I cannot tell you how often I've heard the same bit of insight from successful entrepreneurs, which is find the stuff that you don't want, that gives you the rash, that gives you the, you know, that has that aversion, and say, I'm never going back to that. My very first book that I wrote in the dedication, I dedicated it to my first boss. And I said, everything that you taught me, I've done the exact opposite. And that's why I've become successful. And my publisher, Wiley, took it out. They said, you can't say that. I said, why? It's true. So I think that's amazing. People are always desperate. They're searching for their why. And as you say, it's discovered, it's uncovered. It's not elusive. It's inside. You just have to find it. And how do you find it? You triangulate it as well. So I really love that. The other thing you did is you spoke about community. And for those people that are watching, sit back, relax. This is the entrepreneur's journey is about celebrating my guest, you, Nat, but also people watching. We're ultimately celebrating our journey together because we are greater than me, right? We are greater than you or me or you or I. So this is a community that you've built, the brand built. So sit back, watch 3 minutes and 42 seconds of it, and then we'll talk about the power of we.
Why did you make Brand Built?
The real reason, or the main reason, someone mentioned community to me. When I heard about that, I instantly thought of you and said, why don't we just start a community based around all the stuff that I've effectively learned in the last year of coaching. One-to-one coaching is grueling and it's tough. I wish I had a community 3 years ago
For me, Brand Built represents all of the networking groups that I've been a part of. I've always had these really great networking groups that were either peer-to-peer coaching or business-to-business, lead exchange, but there was always something missing. And the thing that was missing was the fact that the reliance was so heavy on the meeting itself. All that education, the classroom, that's what true community means to me. So who is Brand Built for?
Honestly, I think it really caters to A, build a brand, B, leverage that brand to grow their business as well as grow their network, and even just learn how to navigate their way around a platform like LinkedIn. Every possible thing there is to know, every nook and cranny there is, revolved around brand building as well as business building.
So to me, Brand Built is for any individual, regardless if you're a business owner or an employee or a professional. It's for any individual that truly desires to be successful. That is community. If you become a Brand Built member, what do you get in return?
You get the whole world and everything in it. I think there are two main anchors to Brand Built. One of them is the classroom, which is the LinkedIn Mastery course, which is basically an A to Z, everything you need to know. You can do this in probably 12 weeks. The other anchor is our community. So that's our discussion boards, right?
If you are a member of Brand Built, you have passed the test. You are clearly a successful achiever. You desire to be at another level, and you want to help support others along the way. Why should people join Brand Built, Nat Berman?
There's absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain. If you are looking to accelerate the process of building a brand and educating yourself on your own business, then Brand Built is a very, very viable solution.
Fast track your success with the support of Brand Built. That's what it's about. There's no easy way. There's no shortcuts. But when you have a supportive community, it just makes it a lot more enjoyable because you're celebrating even the micro wins. I wish I had a community like Brand Built when I was starting out. I wish I did. We're growing the community of our dreams to help support our members every single day.
Nat, I want the world and I want everything in it. Can you help? Can you deliver this to me? You know, you spoke you spoke about you had 100, likes and 100 comments, and I want to get there. Seriously, it's so funny. It's so relative. It's so relative when I look at the content I create on LinkedIn, feeling almost like I'm on the journey, but I'm behind you, and which doesn't make me feel insecure or that I've missed the boat. In fact, it's good to know that there is a leader or a role model or a community that has actually been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, see a little hat tip to your t-shirt as well. But yeah, I would give my fourth child for 100 comments and 100 likes, and I only have 3. So that's one of my lines. So it's all relative. But tell us more about the power of community and how a schmuck like myself with that AI is cruel to. Can I ever get 100 comments, 100 likes?
Sure. I mean, just the other day I had 900. So it grows quite a bit.
Damn you, Nat Berman.
But it takes time. One of the nice things about starting off new is that you can start off right. And I actually didn't, when I came back in 2023, I had so many dead followers, and people were telling me to restart and delete my account, which is crazy. I already had literally 25,000 followers. So the how is there's the specific framework in terms of how you grow on a place like LinkedIn. There's really 3 main things, right? It's your profile, which is effectively your landing page. And that really does need to be optimized. So something people don't really recognize about a profile is people actually spend a lot of time on your banner, on average 7 seconds, which is a lot. And that's a long time for somebody to look at something. So people are looking at your banner for 7 seconds. People think a banner is not that important. They're wrong. It's very, very important. Your calls to action, your buttons, any of your outbound links, your featured section, your button, your tagline. These are all really, really important. But after that, let's say all that is optimized and it looks great. Well, you got two other jobs to fulfill every single day: content and engagement, right? You need to be writing content every single day that resonates and speaks to the types of clients that you are trying to attract. So that's on the content side of things. Then you've got formatting, and it needs to be good. And something that I had to adjust to was that it's copywriting. It's very, very different writing than, writing an article or a book or something along those lines. This is copywriting. This is short, to the point, really needs to cut through, not waste any time. So on the content side, there's that. And then there's engagement, which is the commenting. But it's not just commenting on your stuff. It's making informative, good comments on other people's articles, people who you find interesting, people who might be your ideal client, and doing this on a constant basis. I'm a bit of an anomaly on LinkedIn because I'm on the platform probably longer than 99.9% of the people. I usually spend 5-6 hours a day on LinkedIn, which is crazy. And not everybody has that time commitment. And by the way, I am not saying that you have to put in 5-6 hours a day on a LinkedIn. But like any other endeavor, if you want to grow a business from LinkedIn, if you literally want something to turn into something that could be, let's say, a 6-figure or more per year business, if you're not putting in 2 hours a day, it's not going to work. Why would it work? If you started a business without LinkedIn and didn't put it in 2 hours a day, what are the chances of you becoming a 6-figure, business owner in the span of a year? Probably pretty low, I would imagine. So I tell everybody that, look, if you want to take this seriously, yeah, you're going to have to put in the 1 to 2 hours a day. Do you have to be like me? No, definitely not. You don't have to go completely crazy off the wall, making hundreds of comments and all that. I do that out of choice because I have the time. And maybe I'm crazy and maybe I'm doing the wrong thing, but it is a choice. So if you have a very specific plan, have the support behind you. And what I mean by that is learning, being able to rely on people for questions and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of why we created the community in the first place, is that people aren't really alone. And it's just been a really, really nice boost for everybody to be able to ask questions every day, all day, in our discussion boards. And we have meetings every single week, twice a week. So we have guest speakers, and then once a week we do what's called extra help. So people who have any questions specifically can get access to myself and my partner in a Zoom call. So how to do it? Back to your question, you got to have a plan. You got to stick to it religiously for at least 1-2 hours a day. You got to be consistent and show up, and you got to be willing to put in at least 6 months to a year to do it. I don't believe in all that crap where it's like, hey, you can grow to 10,000 followers in a month. That doesn't work that way. You can if you talk about growing on LinkedIn and all the stuff that's popular and gets a lot of eyeballs. But is that going to get you a business? That's a very, very different subject altogether, right? So I tend to take almost an all of the above approach. But if you're small and you don't have a large following and you don't have a lot of eyeballs coming your direction, you need to be as deliberate and targeted as possible while you're at the same time building up your brand, building up that following, gaining an audience. And those are the kinds of things that we help people do from the get-go. People are like, oh, I don't do any outbound. Why not? Why wouldn't you reach out to somebody who's clearly giving you the open door to reach out to them? If somebody connects with you, if somebody comments on your content, if somebody views your profile, if somebody follows you, they're not going to be offended if you say hello, right? So it's a really, to me, it's an interesting opportunity. And it's funny, I used that word fleeting before, because I think all social media platforms, and let's not make a mistake about it, LinkedIn is a social media platform. It's a more professional one, but it is a social media platform nonetheless. And I don't know where it's going to be in a year. I don't know where it's going to be in a month. Algorithms change, the way companies operate change. We do not own that platform. But what the platform has provided us and given us is an amazing opportunity to build our own audience and our own platform off of their platform for free. Is it really free? No, you're using up your time. That's the price that you are paying, and whatever, their monthly membership. But I think it's a great opportunity. And by the way, you can do this on any social media platform of your choice. I just happen to think LinkedIn is it's the one that's worked out best for me. And obviously there's 1 billion users, so something's going right over there. Yeah, that's it.
And you know what? That is almost George Costanza ending on a high, leaving the Yankees meeting. I loved it. And there was a sound bite in there, Nat, where you said they're not going to be offended by saying hello, and then it just hit me. Like, you could be saying, well, you got to have 4 words and 3 hashtags, and your video to content to audio ratio needs to be, and all I'm hearing from you is just be a human being.
Yeah. People
Mm.
are starving for that. The less human things get, the more humanity we are starving for on a daily basis. And it's, to me, the biggest compliment you can ever get. And I receive these compliments enough that it keeps my energy going constantly, as they're like, man, you're one of the realest people on here. I'm like, oh, cool. Thank you. That means everybody else is fake. It's like, it's a refreshing thing to hear, but it's sadly, but realistically, where we are, is that hearing a voice that is true and meaningful and believes what they say, does what they say, seems to be a rarity in this world right now. So that to me spells opportunity. Always has.
Yeah, 100%. And I will tell you, I will just share with you just a quick anecdote, which is, this resonates with me very personally. I was one of the first bloggers and marketing podcasters in the world, and Jaffe Juice, my blog, had the juice, as did my Twitter account, and the way that people would be able to connect with me, and I would share this and I would train this, were the people that would comment on my blog post. And then they would comment again. It wasn't gratuitous. And eventually I got to know them, and they became a regular, and I built a relationship with them, even though I didn't know who they were. It was so easy. Whether it was whether the person was the biggest name in the world, if they actually, had comments enabled on their blog and they responded, and that familiarity that was built, and that trust and that relationship. And suddenly I'm listening to you thinking, Joe, why don't you do that? Why are you not commenting and spending a little bit of time to comment on other people's posts? And I almost kind of, I go like, you arrogant, self-centered SOB. You should be, if you want to build relationships, you got to do the work too. It cannot be one way. So you've helped ground and anchor the second coming of Joe Jaffe, following the second coming of Nat Berman, as well. Nat, we have about a minute left, but I started the show by absolutely bastardizing and creating a Brundlefly version of Nat Berman and Vanilla. The reason why I did it was because of ICE: identify, strategize, and execute. It just put me out of my misery and just tell people how they can use ICE. ICE, baby.
Sure. It's just a framework that I came up with. And look, I don't think any of this is new, but it's certainly marketable, obviously, because of the word ICE, and it's relatable. But I came up with this, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think. And effectively, I'm of the firm belief that whether it's a business, a skill, a hobby, just anything that you want to get good at or better at or be successful at, it always comes down to a couple of things. Always. There's always something you can remove. We've had somewhat of a theme here of, not doing the things you don't want to do. Well, when it comes to growing a business, it always comes down to a couple things. Some people, it could be, I need to raise money. I need to get sponsors, right? In real estate, right? Or for some people, hey, you want to grow your LinkedIn account? Well, what does it come down to? Two things. It comes down to content. It comes down to engagement, right? So in this particular framework, the first step is always to identify what those 2 or 3 things are, right? And once you identify what those 2 or 3 things are, that's when you come up with a strategy. The strategy is all of the things that you need to tend to on a daily basis to ensure that those 2 to 3 things are getting accomplished and are improving, right? So if you're somebody who wants to lose weight, what are your main things? It's pretty obvious: nutrition and exercise, right? It's usually those 2 things. Anything that comes under that, exercise could be your workout regimen. It could be your schedule, right? You're working out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever it might be, or I'm running this day, or I'm doing that. Like that falls under, that's your strategy. Nutrition, right? Meal plans, what's your caloric intake, how much protein you're having, how much fat are you consuming, blah, 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 blah. Those are all the things that fall under. And then the last thing, which is, I think you would probably agree with this, the reason people hire coaches is for the execution part. It's the accountability. It's to ensure that 1 and 2, identifying and strategizing, are actually being implemented. And a lot of times people have an easier time doing that when they have someone who's by their side and pushing them. And sometimes those people, like me, they'll push you hard. Sometimes I'll praise you. Sometimes I'll tell you you're being a lazy piece of shit, right? Like it doesn't matter. But and then you put that all together, and if there's a mental, emotional, if there's a connection and there's a fit, that's when you move forward. And I think that fit has to be there on both sides. I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody, which is why I never have a problem with people saying no. It's like, if somebody says no, I'm like, that's cool. Someone out there is a fit.
You put them,
right?
You put them all together, and you get Vanilla Ice. It's just as simple as that. To me, it was like the movie twins, Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Nat, you are the Arnold Schwarzenegger to Vanilla Ice's Danny DeVito. You can take that one to the bank. I've really enjoyed the connection we've created by me reaching out to you and spending what I would call 1 hour of time well spent. You were very gracious with some of the ideas, some of the tips that you shared. I personally will be first in line to read Let Her Rip, the story of 8-figure Nat Berman. For the rest of you, if you want to learn, if you want to join the community, you can connect with him on LinkedIn, and you can join the community, as many people are doing, realizing that you're not alone, and together, the whole really is greater than the sum of its parts. And finally, find out more about how to work with Nat at natberman.com. Nat, we got 10 seconds left. Final thought. What do you want to leave people with?
I always love to leave people with my motto. I've got 2 mottos. One of them is do what you got to do, and the other one is no excuses, get it done.
We're the ones who dare to dream. We won't let anyone hold us back. We'll take the road, let's travel by and build our empire piece by piece. We've got our dreams and we've got a plan. We're not afraid to take a stand. We'll face the risks and embrace the fear, cause we know that success is near. There will be times when we'll fall down, but we'll get up and turn it around. We're entrepreneurs, we're not afraid to lose. We'll keep moving forward, we got nothing to prove.